Rebonjour.
Good morning again.
Alors, VI et
Via Rail.
2017. Alors, pour VI
2017.
Canada,
For
c'est une
Via Rail
opportunité unique pour les
Canada, this is
Canadiens
really
d'apprendre
a unique
le
opportunity
Canada.
for Canadians to
Écouter
learn
d'abord,
more about
s'écouter les uns
Canada,
les autres,
to listen to
apprendre à
each
se connaître,
other, to get to
et
know
à
each other,
travers ce processus,
and through the process,
apprendre à vivre le
learn
Canada.
to
Pour ses valeurs,
live through
et
Canada,
pour ce
to
qu'on estime
experience
être
Canada, through its
l'avantage
values,
distinctif du
through
Canada.
what we feel is Canada's distinct
Alors, le chemin
advantage.
de fer.
The railway?
Le chemin de fer, évidemment,
Well,
est à la source,
the railway
ou
is really
à la naissance du Canada.
helped in the whole
We all
birth
know
of Canada.
the mythology or the story about the last spike in British Columbia, where we started these conferences a month ago. And that band of steel was meant to unify the country, as it was mentioned earlier, in a physical sense. And behind that effort, which at the time was one of the world's greatest engineering effort to tie a country together with this type of seasons, the weather, the mountains, from ocean to ocean. It was a real engineering feat, and many immigrants who came to Canada paid with their lives that task. And every day when I ride the railway in my business, I recall those sacrifices as I see current workers with different technology, so be it, with different technology working those railways. The physical aspect of tying the country together was also about making this country a place to live. And the railway was at the center of that as well. Obviously here, Maritimers are well acquainted with Pier 21. À partir du quai 21, beaucoup de Canadiens ont
A number of
pris le train pour les
Canadians
amener au
landed
centre
in
du
Pier
Canada, où
21
ils
to
ont
take the
peuplé,
train to
les
reach the
prairies,
center of Canada,
canadiennes,
to
jusqu'à
start
éventuellement
settling
se rendre
the prairies
à
right
l'océan
up
l'océan
to
Pacifique.
the Pacific Ocean.
Et éventuellement, malheureusement,
And eventually,
de par
unfortunately,
des conflits militaires,
because
le Canada,
through
Canada,
military
as
conflicts,
the expression is, came of age at the time of Vimy by asserting its sovereignty as a nation in a global conflict. And again, the railway played the role of bringing many servicemen and women to the lines and bring them back, those who made it back. And the sacrifice that was made then, that Romeo Dallaire suggested in Winnipeg we should commemorate here in Canada, I think is a great idea. So it only makes sense then that Via Rail decided in the last few years to associate itself with those symbols of building Canada. From the vision of John A. Macdonald, the first Prime Minister of Canada, who had that vision and made that dream come true, we announced a partnership with the Institute of Canadian Citizenship by which every new Canadian, in Canada today, 250,000 people immigrate to Canada, 150,000 become new citizens. So every year, every time a new Canadian becomes a new Canadian, they are offered an opportunity to travel anywhere in Canada via GOES with them and 4 members of their family at a greatly reduced price as a way to ask them or suggest to them and invite them to discover their country. And it's really interesting. We've launched this in July 1st of last year. It was not a great PR coup to launch it on July 1st, but we launched it last year, and it's really interesting to see the velocity at which this is picking up. You know, the first few weeks you had a few people picking it up, but now hundreds of people are picking it up every month, this offer. And it's great to see the tweets that we get and the Facebook posts that we get on our websites of people who are actually traveling the train for the first time and going from Toronto to Saskatoon in the winter and realizing how bad winter can get, or going to Ottawa and visiting the nation's capital. The other partnership that we entered into the last 2 years is with the Canadian military. So every member of the armed forces, current, active, or retired, and their family are entitled to same thing, a pretty steep discount at all times on all services provided by VIA. And again, it's the way for us to recognize them for the role they have played in protecting the rights and liberties of this country and the values we stand for. And it is a natural association for us. And so beyond the symbols, we like to think that there's a true statement of our connection as your Crown Corporation to the lives of each and every one of you. And that's why 2 weeks ago, the Bank of Canada announced the new $10 bill. And on that $10 bill is the Via Rail train with a picture of the Rockies and Sir John A. as on the pictogram. And so it's a great symbol that from now on, or from actually since coming in November, all of you will be carrying a Via Rail train in your pocket. So that's the Via Rail network today. That stretches from Halifax to Vancouver and goes up to Churchill, Manitoba. That's my only plug for the network. So now a country to discover. So going towards 2017, that is our suggestion. Canadians should become tourists in their own country. They should learn to discover their own land. Yes, for its geography, which I think can be compared with advantages to any other country's geography, but for the experience. As a Quebecer, I have lived in Ontario, and I've lived here in Prince Edward Island in the summers of my youth with my children, and I have discovered in myself a different Canadian based on where I lived at any given time. I was a different Canadian growing up in Montreal. J'étais pas le même garçon quand je grandissais dans le
I wasn't
dans
the
l'Est de
same
Montréal,
person
dans
when I
Rosemont.
grew up in Rosemont,
Nor was I
in
the
the
same
east of
boy when
Montreal.
I,
And
at 28, moved to Toronto and built a career there and raised a family. And when I would go to PEI in the summer, or came down actually to Nova Scotia for a yearly visit in Woeville, Nova Scotia, at Acadia University, I was a different fellow altogether. And we have that ability in this vast country to be different Canadians depending where we are. And so we encourage Canadians to live that experience. The second element of living that experience is not only the landscape, it's also the people. When you board a train, a Via Rail train, you meet a lot of people, and you're afforded the time and the comfort to get to know them. And you get to hear their stories. And through those stories, you discover how so many of us trace our roots back to Pier 21. So many of us trace our roots back to immigration over the last 5 years. Or you may be sitting next to someone who is taking advantage of his new Canadian package from Via Rail, or a former serviceman from the armed forces. So getting together, getting to know people, and discovering the country not only physically, but also on a human level. Via Rail se veut une expérience canadienne. Depuis 2
Via
ans,
Rail
nous
is a
avons tout
Canadian
mis en place
experience. For the
pour que
last 2
l'expérience
years,
soit
we've
vraiment une
implemented
expérience exclusivement
as much as
canadienne.
possible everything to
Alors
make
oui,
sure that it is a
effectivement,
truly
les ours
Canadian
polaires et les
experience.
baleines que vous
Of course,
visitez
there
à
you can
travers
see
les
polar
voyages de
bears
rêve
and
sont
whales.
canadiennes.
They are
Mais
Canadian
au-delà de
symbols.
ça, la
But
nourriture
over
que
and
vous
beyond
goûtez
that, the
vient du
food you're going
terroir
to
et vient
eat,
des
everything
océans
comes
canadiens.
from our
Les
land,
artistes
from
qui,
our oceans. The artists who
font
will
le divertissement à
entertain
bord sur les
you
longs
on board
parcours sont aussi des
are
Canadiens
also
que nous amenons
Canadians that we
de
bring
ville en ville
in from
pour leur
different
permettre de se rendre à
cities
leur
to allow
destination, à
them
leur
to
gig,
get to their
sans
next
frais.
gig in the next
Et
city
dès le mois de juin,
free
en
of charge.
collaboration avec nos
And
amis de
starting in
Radio-Canada
June, with our
et,
friends at
le
CBC Radio-Canada and the
et
International
Historical
Fest
Dominion,
Festival and
nous
Historical
allons
Dominion,
produire et mettre en
we're going
diffusion sur nos
to
trains des productions canadiennes.
show
Autant
Canadian
des
films
nouvelles,
on our
évidemment, mais autant les
trains,
émissions de
what
télé que
news
les films
broadcasts as
et,
well, but
très
TV
bientôt, les films de
programs,
Téléfilm
films,
Canada.
and
C'est une
films
façon
from
pour nous
Telefilm
d'amener aux
Canada.
Canadiens
This
les
is a way
expériences
for us
développées par
to
des
show
Canadiens. So you can all have the
experiences
experience,
to
so
Canadians
you can
by
all experience the
Canadians.
greatness of Canadian creativity and Canadian productions. And so you as taxpayers have paid for those productions, whether they come from CBC, the NFB, Historical Dominion, or other in Telefilm Canada, and you're entitled to know how good they are and to bask in the glory of so many Academy Award-winning productions that many of us forget are Canadians. And it was great in Toronto, because my opening act was Paul Schaefer, and it was great to see a kid like that from North Bay or Thunder Bay, I can't remember, and when you think about it and you see him at night with David Letterman, and you go, my goodness, it's fantastic. I don't know about you, but I'm proud. I'm proud to be a Canadian. So, les Canadiens partageant leur histoire. Be a tourist in your
Canadians
country.
shared their
Share
stories.
your stories. And on that basis, allow me to be the first to share my story. So in 1945, my mother was jailed in Germany and in Belgium, I'm sorry. And so at Liberation, decided to come to Canada because there was no other place for her to go back home. And so she came to Canada in the hope of finding freedom and stability and a land of freedom and no oppression. In 1951, my father, who was a farmer's son in Italy, decided to move to Canada in the hope of having a better future, although There are days in Canada in the winter where I think Italy would have been a better place, but he wanted a better economic future. So he came to Canada and he got a job as a tobacco picker in Joliette, Quebec. In 1956 or 53, they met. In 1956, their dreams came true, and I'm speaking to you today. And so et donc, mes parents ont tous les deux réalisé des rêves
Both of my
différents.
parents
Un rêve de sécurité, de
realized
liberté,
different dreams. One, a dream of
et un
security,
rêve
of freedom. The other one,
progression
this
sociale et
dream
économique.
of economic and
Et
social
le Canada, en moins d'une
advancement.
génération,
And
à
in less
travers ma
than
vie
one
et celle de
generation,
mes
through me,
enfants,
through myself and
leur
my
a donné ces
children,
opportunités.
Canada has given them this
And,
opportunity.
when I lost my mother recently, she reminded me of that she had come to Canada for that purpose and that purpose alone. And that purpose had been accomplished through me and my children. And many of us in this room have had that experience. When I go to Pier 21, I see the boat, and I've seen the signatures of my parents signing in when they came into Canada. That is Canada. And today, 150,000 new Canadians joined this country, and they have the same stories. And everyone in this room has a story. And that story is what binds us together. Au-delà des différences économiques et sociales,
Over and beyond
au-delà
our
des moments et
economic
des
and social
technologies.
differences, over
Ce
and
qui nous
beyond
unit comme
technology,
Canadiens, c'est l'histoire qui nous a
what
amenés au
unites
Canada
us
et
as
les
Canadians
ambitions
is
que
the
nous
story
partageons.
that brought us to
Et donc,
Canada
c'est à
and
partager
our
ces
shared
ambitions et ces
ambitions.
histoires
We have to
que nous
share these
deviendrons
ambitions,
une plus grande
share
nation,
these
un
histories,
peuple plus
and
uni,
that's how
plus
we'll
prospère.
become a more
So we invite you to visit your
united
country, be a tourist in your own homeland, meet as many Canadians as possible, and if you should do it by the train, we thank you very much on that. So in closing, let me quote Leo Tolstoy, by paraphrasing him by saying, all I know about this country, I only know because I love this country. And I know you do too. Alors merci beaucoup et vive le Canada.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.